I'm Igor Janke. I'm happy to be here and to be able to moderate this debate. I'm a journalist, and I'm a journalist from traditional media. I work for a newspaper called Rzeczpospolita, and I'm also co-owner of a blogging platform, political blogging platform, which is a completely new media. So I have two hats and I'm living two worlds. Let me introduce our great guest. It's Iryna Vidanava from Belarus. She runs a magazine called 33meg.net. Pardon? 34. I said what? Yeah, 34 net. Erika Mann from Facebook. She's head of global public policy team. Rafał Trzaskowski, who is a member of the European Parliament for EPP, Polish Civic Platform, and Igor Ostrowski, Deputy Minister, responsible for digital engagement. So I hope everyone will be very engaged now, and I strongly recommend you to take part in the debate. Please be interactive and raise your hands if you would like to give any comment or ask a question. Some announcements. Okay, the topic of our debate is technology and its impact on freedom. I would like to divide this debate into three parts. But first, I would like to start with the situation in undemocratic regimes. How technology can help in fighting for democracy, or how technology helps in fight with democratic fighters. And so, first I would like to ask Iryna to share her experience and her thoughts about this.
Good afternoon. Does it work? I feel like I'm a singer. I cannot sing, so I will better speak about new media. I guess I won't speak too much because Belarus has been a topic discussed a lot, and everybody heard all the bad things about it. And it's kind of boring just to speak about how tough things are. I will probably just point out a few important things that happened recently. Well, I represent the new media, which I've been doing for the last 7 years, but our move from print media to new media was enforced by the closure of the original print magazine. So we couldn't continue to do the use magazine on print, and back in 2006, internet was very slow, very expensive. There were more people with computers than with access to internet, and therefore we came up with an unusual format of publishing a magazine on compact discs. Then in 2009 we added an online version to that because there were more people hooked online and internet was faster, cheaper, and so on. So for us it was a forced move which actually gave us a lot of advantages, and I can speak a lot about them, but most of it is that digital information can be replicated as much as you want. It can be copied, it can be passed to each other. You can put so much more information into one CD than one print issue. You can do even more online when you update it so often. So I would say it was true for most of independent media. The traditional media were suppressed, were repressed, were closed down. We didn't have any access to TV, to radio. So internet was the only window of opportunity. And unlike the state, in Belarus, the independent media actually took all advantage of what internet could give them potentially. And the breakthrough happened in 2011. After the crackdown on 19th December 2010, hundreds of thousands of people went online to see what was happening in their country. And since then, I would say, when something happens in Belarus, people turn on their computers, they don't turn on their TV. We see the decrease in trust to the traditional media, to state TV, to state radio, to state newspapers. We see the increasing interest and trust to independent media. The audience of online media in Belarus, mostly independent media in Belarus, doubled for the majority. For some of the resources, it went 4 times higher. So today we are talking about the joint audience of 8 independent news websites, equaling the daily audience of one of the state leading TV channels. So before 2011, we were struggling to survive Since 2011, thanks to new technologies, thanks to social networks, and it will be my next point, we are actually competing. And that's a huge, big success story in Belarus. Well, now the question is, once we get the attention of people, once we get access to larger audiences, can we motivate them to do something about it? And that's an open question. I don't have an answer to it. We saw a breakthrough in the summer when using social networks, Contact with the Russian analog of Facebook, which is more popular in Belarus. We have 2.5 million users in Contact. We're having a huge growth in Facebook audience. It's getting more popular and is viewed by Facebook is viewed more like for more smarter young professional people. Contact is more like teenage audience. But anyway, we are talking about huge audiences. Using these two networks in the summertime, people organized first gasoline strike. Cell phones were not used at all by the organizers. It turned off them completely and organized a strike which blocked the center of Minsk for several hours only through the social networks. Then others picked up from there and started organizing so-called silent protests when hundreds of people and thousands of people were taking the streets just applauding every Wednesday. And that was unexpected to anyone. Political leaders didn't know what to do about that. International community missed the story first, then picked it up, and then it was too late because the regime used a brutal force to put it down. And that's another challenge to new technology. Well, it's out there, you can use it, you can be even successful in doing so, but then there are our old friends as policemen, special forces, arresting people, detaining, beating them up, putting in prison. Let's say 15 days. But if you're a young person who got a call on social network, oh, come over, let's take the streets, let's have fun, and then for this fun you actually get beaten, then the enthusiasm is actually fading pretty fast, as we noticed. So I would say that on the one hand, yes, I'm happy to speak about serious breakthrough in information revolution in Belarus with a lot of potential in it. And we see this potential, I'm happy to take advantage of it, and we are taking advantage of it. On the other hand, it's a story of how you can actually anticipate what the government can do, or how you can stay creative and responsible when you're organizing people using virtual technologies once they're getting in the real world and facing the real challenges. I'll probably stop here.
And how good the government is in the fight with you? I mean, are they closing down your website? Are they filtering the web?
I will start with a typical sad story is that in Belarus there is a special decree regulating internet. It's a decree number 60. It's very vague. Nobody knows exactly how it works, if it works, how it's implemented. Officially, it was announced that there are 35 blacklisted websites. There is a list of them, but it's not public. So there is a list, but we don't know what it is. And it says that it's for the websites with pornographic content. Again, you can define pornographic the way you want. And then unofficially, it was leaked information that there are 60 websites blocked, and we know that the most popular resources such as Charter 97, Belarus Partizan, and some others are being blocked. On the other hand, there are reports that people still can access them from even state institutions and universities. So it's not a total control yet, but there is, again, a potential and the law in place which would allow to do that. Then the new amendment was added so that you can fine people for violating the decree number 60. So they're trying to use different tools, learning from other guys like China. There was a delegation sent there to learn how you do it better. But again, Belarus is a smaller country with less resources, less human resources. And it's very hard at this moment when the momentum was already lost to control the internet completely and to block people from using it. There were lots of questions when I was talking at such panels in the summer, after the summertime, after the silent protests, why Lukashenko wouldn't block social networks. That would be easy. Well, if you count it this way, if you block access to Contact, you will piss off 2.5 million people, or you allow them using Contact and try to block one community or a couple of communities which are organizing the protests, which are bringing a few hundred or thousands of people who you can arrest easily. So the risks are much higher for blocking completely than to use traditional methods to suppress. The final story, which I will tell now, shows how the government still doesn't understand what internet is actually doing to people and to how we consume information. A few weeks ago, my magazine published a very typical story, which I thought of it. I didn't think it would be bomb at all. Our reporters went to a small school 37 kilometers away from Minsk. So it's basically very close to the capital. And they did a report about the daily life of school children there. That was pretty depressing in many ways, but it was a true story. Everybody who lives in my country knows that this is how things are. So we publish it on our website, which is in top 30 most popular internet resources, but it's not an overwhelmingly huge resource read by millions. So on our website, the story would be read probably by 5,000–6,000 people. Then a couple of big independent media picked up the story, reposted, and then the local school administration read the story somewhere, and they started campaigning against it. They called the portals which reposted our story, asking to remove. Some of them agreed, some of them didn't agree. They put pressure on the teacher who talked to us. They put pressure on us trying to make us to remove the story. We didn't do that. Then they wrote an open letter to the biggest portal in Belarus, which published this letter, as it was asked, but put a link to the original story, which was us. That was the biggest internet story of 2 weeks, read by thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions. Well, that just shows you how stupid they might be, not understanding that when you're trying to censor, like you used to do in the old times, then you get the opposite effect.
It sounds quite optimistic, however. I would like to turn to Erika Mann and ask about your experience, your company experience, since you're representing such a giant and probably now the first source of information for most of people all over the world. Could you share us your, Facebook experience with undemocratic regimes? How often you have problems, how you solve them? Because you take a huge responsibility now. Could you tell us how does it look? What is your experience?
I think, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. By the way, I'm not responsible for global public policy, but for Europe. The experience is very different. I think one has to be very cautious, from a company point of view, to judge what is going on. We have the responsibility to ensure that the system is safe, that it's secure, that our user can use it, wherever they are, whatever they want to do. Within the legal limits, of course. I think what is interesting to see and listening to Iryna, I think it is the individual, it's the empowerment of the individual which happens on the internet. It's a complete ecosystem. We are just part of it. We are the largest player when it comes to social media, but don't forget there are many other players which are important and relevant as well. And I'd just like to name one of them, which is sometimes forgotten, which played a major role during the Arab Spring, and this was Al Jazeera. So it's just, I think it's a complete ecosystem which is there. We are part of it, and we are extremely proud that our technology can be used in such a way, and we try our best to be extremely trustworthy and responsible with this tool. But the real power is with the individual, and this is the change. The real change is that the social media and all the other technologies allow the individual really to take power, to take responsibility and to take power, and to become a dominant player in whatever kind of role they want to play. In this case, it's a political role, and it's the social media, it's an ideal environment because you can exchange quickly and you can share information with your friends, you can build political groups, you can reach out to so many people in a country, which is a very powerful, of course, possibility and very powerful option. And of course, in the case the classical media is conservative or is controlled and governed to a large degree by a state, then of course you can build opposition, which is extremely powerful. So we do our best what we can do to ensure that system one, that system are working Our people, if crises show up, they're there day and night, and they will ensure that no disruption happens. But let's be frank, if governments come in and block the system, and we have seen this in many times, I mean, it's a reality we have to face, and we have to face all, and we have to work so that the blocking is just occurs for a short period of time, so that the people which want to work and want to transmit their messages are not disrupted by such kind of filtering or blocking.
Since you invited us to take an active role and also ask questions, if you don't mind, I'd love to ask Erica a question. Because I think the role of aggregators, content aggregators, the role of entities such as Facebook is going to change. And I wonder what your views on that is, because for the past few years, we were so overwhelmingly happy about all these new interesting social media that were, let's say, pro-democratic tools, Ushahidi in Kenya, the maps in Haiti. Then, I mean, we can name these projects, and the Belarus project you mentioned, where social media starts to play a very important role. Then suddenly, during the Arab Spring, we saw that, let's say, there's the second side to the coin, and I'm referring to is I'm sure some of you remember a story that appeared on YouTube, a story about one of Gaddafi's sons in Paris, and his very flamboyant evening that was taped and placed on YouTube. And then what happened was we realized, or I guess YouTube realized first, that their notice and takedown procedure, which was initially created to combat, let's say, content that was breaching intellectual property rights, that was the main issue. You give a notice and say that content is illegal, please take it down, and people take it down. There's a procedure. And suddenly, that procedure was used by Gaddafi's regime to try to identify the person who actually uploaded the video, so that they could take action against that, let's say, against that opposition movement. And so suddenly YouTube ended up in between, let's say, two forces fighting in Libya. And these, of course, as we see here, appear in the case of blocking. That's why, for example, Poland is so much against the idea of even introducing blocking, like the Safer Internet Directive, where we believe it's not right to even introduce the idea of blocking sites or blocking mechanisms, because they can be abused. But then, really, the government is no longer the sole stakeholder in the decision-making process. So if we have to, let's say, put a line somewhere between safety and freedom, because there has to be that balance somewhere, Facebook is going to have to take a stance. YouTube is going to have to take a stance. There will have to be new policies established in order to, let's say, somehow find yourself in this new position that you're going to be in. So I wonder what Facebook is doing about that, and what will be the future policies, or are they even being shaped right now?
I mean, I think you put it absolutely right. It's an extremely important and crucial balance between, safety and security and freedom. That's my very personal opinion. Like with all technology, when you look back in the technology revolution, the printing press, and all what came after, I think it was always true that each society had to fight again to identify what is the right balance. So it's not really intellectually and politically a new question, it's a new one, because the technology is so different. The printing press was one step, a major step, when you look back, and I'm reading all the books again, about the fight at the time, because I think you can learn so much from history. But of course, now you have truly the empowerment of the individual, which is it's a major step in a different direction. And this, of course, then means that for a company, the company must take responsibility as well to secure this balance. Now, I think one has to be, and it depends on the business model, and it depends on the dialogue we have with our users, the technical tools which we have. I think my understanding from Facebook is that the tools are actually extremely well developed. So the user has the control, or the group which is using Facebook has really the control to do what I want to do. What we do is to safeguard on top of this what users want to do, to safeguard the whole environment. We do this with different methods. So one method is that we have, for example, in Europe, we are in discussion with the European Commission on safety initiatives, so how you can have a safe internet environment. That's a dialogue where many companies are participating. We developed what we call the community standards, which is a kind of setting of moral and ethical standards. But again, when you look into the real discussion, you see how problematic this is already to develop such kind of community standard, so that certain communities do not feel offended either about particular photos or about particular discussions. It's a critical issue already to develop such kind of standards, and we can of course only do it in discussion with our users. If we are wrong, they will really come back and will tell us, hey, what you are doing is completely impossible, and the discussion will run off Facebook, so it's not something which we are not aware of. And then of course we have a real team, and this team, I just had we call him always our Facebook cop. He was just for 2 days in Brussels. They have a great team, so they do the hardcore safety issues, so to prevent criminal and to work with law enforcement, to prevent real criminal acts, to prevent the bad guys, disturbing or doing criminal acts, against users. So there are different layers, and I think all these different layers are important. But of course, a company and in this environment can only build such kind of sophisticated system in cooperation with users, in cooperation with NGOs, and with governments. I mean, this what makes it so problematic, of course, if you have to work with unreliable governments. I mean, governments which are from democratic societies and that have high standards themselves. It's of course great to work with because they understand the challenge. But the real problems you can only solve really in cooperation, intensive cooperation.
Rafał, you wanted to give them this.
Well, yes. I mean, I wanted mostly to comment on actually the impact of social services, social networking, and so on democratic countries. But I just want to have a small comment on that. I used to be an academic before I went nuts and became a politician, and I went through some literature on that. And it turns out because we tend to be pretty positive and optimistic when it comes to the impact of new technologies on democracy, on democratic countries, and especially looking at what was happening in North Africa, looking at what was happening in Belarus, we see that positive impact. But I mean, there is a flip side to it, and it's really strong. First of all, if you look at the data, because there's quite a lot of research being done on impact of new technologies at what was happening in Arab Spring, Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. I mean, really, if you look at that and talk to the people, I mean, first of all, methodology is not perfect. Second of all, it's really difficult to draw the sort of definite conclusions. Why? Because it's all contingent on democracy level in a given country, and it's also contingent on network penetration. So yes, I mean, those guys who use internet and who are active on social media are more democratic in a sense, and they do their utmost to propel democracy. But I mean, the question remains open: what would happen if there were no internet? I mean, this is, in a sense, the most active part of society anyhow. And when it comes to the flip side, I'll turn you to one of the books that I've read recently, by Professor Morozov from Stanford. I mean, the name is The Net Delusion, The Dark Side of Internet Freedom, when he actually gives examples from Iran and China, where regimes actually use social media to entrench themselves, to make life even more difficult for dissidents and so on and so forth. And his conclusion is that when regimes, authoritarian regimes are strong, that actually social media and internet helps them to entrench themselves. When they're weak, then it's debatable. So it might become a tipping point, like it became when it comes to the Arab Spring, but it's not that it always has a positive impact on actually bringing democracy to the people. And then, you know, when we're going to talk about democratic societies and the impact of social media on that, then it gets even more interesting, especially that it also touches upon regulation that we're responsible for. And one last sentence with my comment on that, you know, we are now seeing a tendency where, you know, all the rules coming from completely different areas want to overtake internet, telecommunication rules. And then there lies a real problem when it becomes tricky, because Russia, China would love it, you know, for the telecommunications union to take over internet. I mean, and that is something to be aware of, especially for regulators.
Iryna wanted to comment.
Yeah, well, Evgeny Morozov is from Belarus, actually. But no, he's originally from Belarus. He's a good friend, a very long-term blogger. But I think, and I think that he has a very innovative way of looking and analyzing the role of new media and social media. But it's also, I mean, I think that the counter-argument to what he's saying in the book is that in Belarus, the breakthrough in usage of new media and social media happened at the highest point of the regime getting stronger. So it's not a clear-cut thing to me to say that where the governments are strong, or the regimes are strong, is there that the usage of social media can be used better against the people. And again, I would say that the difference in scale of the countries and the scale of the control of the internet is also a player in it. So I would also just add one point to what Evgeny says, is that it's important while jumping on using new media and social networks, for those who are using them for democratic purposes, for trying to push for a change, it's also important to understand what your risks are and how you can protect yourself. And that's also a role of a more educated, well-prepared, democratic activist segment of the society to help the rest of the individuals trying to empower themselves to learn what you are doing there, how you do there, and what your risks are. So I think that it's very important to keep in mind that, yes, bad guys can use the technology against you in a very brutal way, but at the same time to know that it's not exactly when they do it that you can do it better in a more innovative way. Back to your point that there are new tools and new technologies coming up and popping up and then fading away. That's true, but that's the strongest part to me, because there are always new tools appearing, and you can get advantage of them before the better organized government picks on that. Ushahidi was used in Belarus in 2010. We created a platform for election monitoring of the violations, and I was surprised how many people actually started reporting their individuals, and the most reports actually came not even from students or from the activists that we expected to have, but from the officials, from the policemen, from the military guys, anonymously, but they said, well, I'm working in this and this city government, and that's what we are doing. And so that's an amazing story. And again, I'm not sure that I will use Ushahidi again. Maybe a new tool will be better for that, but to me, it's something actually good, that things come and go, but then you can take advantage of them.
Okay, so we know that technology gave us enormous, fantastic tools for individuals, tools for societies, for groups of people, for regimes as well, but also for democratic governments. And Igor is working for a government, and he's responsible for digital engagement. What does he mean? What guys we're doing there? That's a good question.
We're, as you know, Poland for the longest time was talking about building information society, how important it is to develop information society, and that once in some time in the future there will be an information society that we will need to face. And then suddenly we realized that information society exists, and it's developing pretty well without any ministry or without any.
The question is whether do we need such a ministry?
Yeah, and the reason why I think we do is because ever since the ministry was created, we actually had a bit of a different perspective on things. If you put internet infrastructure there, and then you put let's say e-administration elsewhere, and you put telecoms somewhere else, then you lose that let's say comprehensive view, and that's why I think we're here. But one thing we didn't expect is that we would be put to the test so quickly, because I started working in early December, and a month later, ACTA, let's say, developed. And
ACTA, for foreigners, ACTA was strongly supported by our Prime Minister, who has completely changed his mind after 2 months, and he became a leader of anti-ACTA movement.
And this is hopefully
thanks to Igor.
And this is hopefully the answer to your question, that maybe it's good that the ministry exists, because really we had that view, that different view. But I don't want to advertise the ministry. I wanted to tell you a little bit about, I think, the challenges that we now face, because one thing that we've learned from ACTA is that we're completely unprepared to deal with the new phenomenon of what digital society has to offer. And what I mean by offer is challenges that it offers to us as the government. Before I took office, we in a board of strategic advisors, we developed several reports. One report that we developed at Centrum Cyfrowe, a think tank that I used to work with, was a report called the Open Government Roadmap, where we, in a nutshell, we said open government is a very important sort of route that we need to take as a government in the future for 3 reasons. For reasons of transparency, for reasons of efficiency, and reasons of innovation. And we put that in a triangle, saying that there are different aspects of open government that are either closer to that transparency side or innovation or so on. But what we did not realize is that when we created this whole analysis of open government, we were looking from a certain perspective, a perspective that we now call perspective of a spider, a perspective of a sort of established government with a council of ministers, with several different legs, as a spider has. Different agencies, departments, and so on, and a central nervous system. And let's say the animal which we faced was not another spider with with the traditional, let's say, trade unions or different type of chambers of commerce that also had a central structure. It was a starfish without a central nervous system that appeared, disappeared. We didn't even know who we were talking to. Who do you invite to negotiate? There's actually, how do you enclose a circle of people that you can talk about these issues? And I think where the answer is going to lie is we're going to have to use the benefits of the internet and really start seriously thinking about participatory democracy and participatory democracy models. And where we look at different crowdsourcing mechanisms to bring initiatives, to start thinking like Wikipedia, using Wikipedia tools to start creating, let's say, different types of initiatives.
Could you give any examples of such initiatives?
Well, for example, the US government has been experimenting with an interesting program called challenge.gov, where there is, where actually we would say that they've created reverse public consultations. So instead of the government creating a bill and then putting it online for comments, it's the other way around. They're actually, the initiative comes from the people and gets developed into the government. Or the petitions that we have heard of for the past 24 hours. There is a petition now going on for the government to take action to convince President Obama to change his statement on the Polish death camps. Well, that's, again, using a very interesting tool, an online petition tool, that the White House has created, where if you have 25,000 applicants, the government is forced to take action. So these are the different tools we're going to experiment with, since we believe that in the future, we will need to start learning how to talk to the starfish. And establish a dialogue to eliminate situations such as ACTA that ends up in a completely dead-end street.
Is the question of technology, or is the question of that's what we have in mind? Because just the tools will not change people's minds.
I think it's both, and that's, I think you've touched on a very important point. That's going to be the biggest challenge of a government. How to make that balance? Because what we need to face our situation, we're also worried that we're going to create all these tools and no one's going to bother. No one's going to use them. I mean, we put, as the ministry, we already started experimenting with this. We put several bills online for public consultations. 6 people, 6 comments. So sometimes there is tons, sometimes there are none. But I think we need to learn from the industry. We need to learn from social networks how to channel discussion, because I believe there are ways to do it. And just to end on that, my favorite example, U.S. Patent Office. They had a backlog of, I think, 5.5 years, where every single applicant had to wait for their patent application to be processed. And then they came up with an experiment. They said, those who are willing to take part, we're going to give you a patent sort of ahead of that queue, but we're going to put your patent application online and allow people to comment, so that we don't need to, let's say, the bottleneck was in the professionals who had to approve the applications to see whether there's an innovation and whether this is not a copy of something else. Well, crowdsourcing proved to be a perfect solution, because you had huge amounts of unanimous Wikipedians who were very happy for no fee to actually prepare those applications. Same as NASA is now doing with star constellations, asking people to try to help them create the descriptions of star constellations. So I think this is the way to go.
Have you got any idea how to channel those discussions, how to engage people and involve people in the process? Rafał.
No, I wanted to talk about also negative experiences, but I'll start with the positive. I mean, the thing with social media and in politics is that, politicians have to learn a completely new way of communicating with the people. Because, it was a politician ex cathedra saying what he thinks, promising things, and so on and so forth. And now in social media is just you listening to others, what they're interested in, what sort of questions do they have, what really bugs them, and so on and so forth.
Using the new media.
Yes.
Tell us what
yes, but I mean, the problem is that almost everyone uses social media now. And for example, in the European Parliament, it's 96% of the members. Most of them use it wrongly, because they still use it as if it was, sort of normal channel of communication. And then obviously, not only it doesn't work, but it's counterproductive. And that's what we have to learn. Even me, when I was doing my political campaign a few years back, I wanted to do an interesting film on the net to actually attract some attention. And I thought, they
were really interesting, I remember them.
If it's not going to be good, I thought, I'm just going to earn, few supporters. If it's going to be better, I'm going to earn more supporters. But my friends who were teaching me how internet works were saying, no, if you're going to do it in a way which is not going to be effective, not only you're going to get less supporters, no, you're going to lose credibility, and that's going to be the end of it. which is like, you know, an eye-opener. But for example, what we've learned, what we've tried in a very sort of limited scale to introduce when we were actually preparing political programs, first in Warsaw for Hanna Gronkiewicz-Waltz, and then to a limited degree when we were preparing a program for Civic Platform, we started thinking differently. What we did, for example, in Warsaw, first of all, we did a huge survey of what people in Warsaw are looking for on the net. What are they really interested? What bugs them? So it wasn't us saying, for us the most important thing is subway and roads. And no, we started thinking what is important for the people. And for example, it turned out that the most active group on the net in Warsaw were mothers with small kids. And suddenly it turns out that you have to think about completely different things, that you have to change your priorities in a way in which you're actually communicating what you want to do in Warsaw.
So what have you done
And
for women with small kids?
And we started talking about it. First of all, I mean, we started reflecting on it, which is really important. Like okay, you know, some of it is just, you know, politicians thinking of what we have done and how to sell it, but some of it is what should we really do in order to attract these voters to us. I mean, second group were bikers, you know. So, and then, I mean, at least in this very limited scale, prioritizing was changed. So we started thinking about what really is important for the people. It turned out that, for example, Vistula River is really important for the people. And we decided to have one, and there is a sort of, you know, a result of it, because one vice president responsible is just for that. A sort of horizontal look at the Vistula River and using, you know, the opportunities stemming from that. And using, for example, I mean, and it changed the thinking just by using this very well-known anecdote when some Japanese local government officials visit Warsaw, and they said, how much money have you paid to have this wonderful natural reserve in the middle of the city? And we said, no, we just didn't put any money into it because that wasn't one of our priorities. So, okay, it's limited. I'm not saying that you know, we have done a revolution, but slowly but surely, we have some sort of signs of that, of changing perception. And I think that this is immensely positive, because, I mean, this is a really sort of democratizing effect when you're starting slowly to listen to the people on a very limited scale. And we need to do a revolution. We need to, you know, to actually follow on from that, which is going to be very, very difficult.
Erika, how to engage people, how to involve them in those processes?
The most important is, I think, to really understand what Rafał and the minister was saying, is that you need to understand the local conditions. I mean, everything in politics, whatever you do, is local. So it's extremely important, and what works in one town or in one state may not work in another one. I mean, we collected, we have a small team at Facebook working on what we call public value. So we try to find out how we can be helpful from a company point of view to support governments, to support legislators, and to help to develop public value. There are so many different examples. I have one which I really love. It's from Denmark. They did something extreme, the Danish government, something extremely simple. They said, how can we show our citizens where their tax money goes? So they just took photos from everything where investment was made and put it on their site, and then linked it to Facebook. And this was extremely powerful, because suddenly you see it and you know, you pass by. It's very simple. It's nothing problematic and complicated. There's no sophistication behind it. But it's a nice way, instead of having a debate and a discussion and, you know, a text line, which doesn't hardly ever mean anything. A budget line maybe, huh? So what the hell are you doing with a budget line? But here you have a nice photo, you see what it costs. You can go further. There are governments which go further, which and parliaments which go further in communities more, in smaller communities, which actually give the budget for decision, you know, for their citizens. Say, you know, you have 3 options that what we think can be done. That's the amount of money which we have available for project A, B, or C. Decide. I mean, that's what we can do with this money. So there are many ways of doing it. But I think the most important really is to understand it's not a single tool you are looking for. It's cross-referencing all the existing social media tools, the classical internet, the blogs, whatever is available, the Twitter, depending on the person who you are, what you like to work with, the classical media, never forget the classical media if you can work with them. So this is the most important bit. That's where the power comes from. And then you will find out what works. Because you know, you may have, like your example, it's a brilliant one. That's what we see in Facebook all the time. So many women love to work with Facebook because it's an ideal environment because of many reasons for them. And they're very engaged. They're very engaged citizens. And we had it was done by Pew. They did a study and they saw actually figured out that people which are active on Facebook are very active in political life as well. They want to be engaged citizens. They want to do something positive. They want to change their community. They want to help their families, or they want to help change whatever their interest is in. And I think that's extremely powerful. And like what you said, I like this very much. Listen, and if you think, the bridge has to be renewed, and maybe the bridge is not important for citizens, maybe something different. It's more, I mean, if it's not breaking down, don't get me wrong, but, so, I mean, just listen.
I have just one more example I want to give you. We were the first to use in Polish political campaigning infographics with Janke. When we wanted to show, in a graphic style, what are the advantages of our actions. But it had, okay, you can say purely PR sort of kind of exercise, but it actually influenced our thinking, because then we said, if we cannot show it in a graphic way, then it means that we were doing something wrong. For example, when we're talking, yes, let's talk about Warsaw. We draw Warsaw, and then, well, what? I mean, we have to do beat, because we had to put things on a map. Kids playing, beaches, and it changed the way that actually we started thinking, because we had to have something concrete to offer to the people, and then, when you have a map like that, people 4 years later can say, okay, that's the map, what have you done? And it starts with something really simple, because you want to communicate in a completely different way by showing graphically what you've done, but then it's much easier for the people to actually take that map out and say you haven't done it. And it changes the way you think, because it's not just blah, 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 but you have to propose certain things. And how do you put them on a map? Again, looking at what people really want. And this is, even though it might start with just a simple presentation tool, it sort of changes the way in which you function. And I think it's immensely positive.
Another advantage which we receive from technology is free online debate. Now everybody can take part in a debate. We have in Poland very livable blogosphere. In the United States, a lot of people take their stance, then they can comment, publish their articles, their blogs, convince other people, gather with their circles, look for other supporters, and so on and so forth. It's wonderful. But it has also some negative sides, and now let me be a devil's advocate. On the other side, I hope, my dream was that we could create a real debate. And now the people thinking left can discuss with people thinking right. Now they can meet on the same platform debating. And I think they're not debating. They are just reinforcing their opinion. They are speaking just to their supporters or the people thinking the same. Their opinions are becoming stronger and stronger. And in fact, there's no... they speak, but they are not listening. I mean, nobody wants to listen on both sides. And I think it's not just a Polish case, but as far as I know, it's also the case of the American case. I'm interested in your views, and also I'm interested in your opinion. Please raise your hands if you would like to, Igor.
That's a very important point. And the first thing that comes to my mind is Professor Lessig, who once said that code is law. That in the future we will see that legislation plays still a very important role, but in the online environment it will be applications, it will be software that will tell us what we can and what we cannot do. And so that, for example, certain, let's say, procedures or certain the manners we work online, it won't be necessary to write rules and regulations. There'll be an application that will lead you away. Whether that's good or bad, that's another separate discussion. So to answer your question, I think the future lies in the software, in how we model the discussion, because there has to be a moderator, naturally. if you look at the, let's say, traditional forums, I agree with you. People probably write in what they need to say after reading an article, and they don't even bother looking what other people before them wrote. So it's not really a discussion, it's a sort of a room full of screens. But what we're doing in the ministry is we're trying to look at examples where there's software that you can use to actually, let's say, try to come into an agreement. And one interesting example is a system of commons for the GNU licenses. We're going to use that just on one sort of note on the side. After ACTA, the ministry started working very closely within task forces to try to look at different issues, problems that ACTA brought about. So there's a task force on copyright, there's a task force on business model, on privacy, on communication between government and citizen, engagement. And now we're going to open it up on a wiki. We're going to use this tool. And what a tool, and for other people to comment, because we want to make sure that it's a generally open debate. Now what this tool does is it gives you a document, and then you can start commenting on it, but the more comments you make to a particular sentence or a particular part, that will start sticking out. And it'll become, let's say, first more in bold, then it'll change colors. So at the end of the day, you still have that document, but you have let's say, you have certain parts of that document that stick out in red, and there's parts that stick out in green. So it's a little bit like the Facebook like and dislike, which is also used, by example, by the Commission now. So if you use applications to try to stir the conversation, hopefully you can actually get a debate going. So that's what we're hopeful for.
Iryna?
Just to add to this, I would say yes. When people have a chance to debate online, very often you see those just taking sides and not really talking to each other. That happens in countries like Belarus as well. But what internet and new media did to us and to other free societies, I believe, it's something that I call a cyber kitchen. Our parents, your parents, probably were, when they were discussing in the Soviet time something that was happening, they were doing it in the kitchens. That was the place for them to raise their concerns, to whisper to each other their concerns. So to my generation, internet became the cyber kitchen, and in this way it is giving a floor for a real debate, even though we don't always listen to each other. So there is, for a free society, still something positive about opening up the possibilities for debate. But I will also agree that sometimes there is, the downside is that very often we're very quick to push the like button, and then you don't do anything else. You just, well, I liked it, so things might change already. Thousands of other people liked it, but then do you do anything about that or not? So maybe if the document is jumping on you out of your computer, then it will force people to do something more than just liking. In Belarus, there is this example of, we still have death penalty. There were 2 people executed after a very unfair trial just recently. There were hundreds of thousands signing online petition against death penalty. But once there was a call made to go on the streets and actually show that we disagree with that what happened, and the society was really shook. When you live in the country, you could feel the tension in it, because suddenly most of us felt that you're totally not protected, that you can be picked up as guilty and executed in months. Mothers with children were very much concerned about that. There was a lot of discussions going on. There was online petitions bursting with signatures, and then there were only 10 people who actually showed up, and they were arrested. So it's just also this balance between what you can do as online debate, online concern raising, and in real life what you do about that.
Let's let people speak. Professor Sadurski, professor of law and very well-known blogger, so big practitioner.
Yeah, thank you. I just would like to follow up on what Igor said about the darker side of the internet in democratic state rather than in say, oppressive regimes. And I would like to go beyond the usual lamentation about certain aberrations of the debate on the internet, but rather confront more specifically the matters raised by Rafał and by Mr. Ostrowski, that is the interaction, or intersection rather, between the internet and the democratic decision making. So don't you think that there is a real danger of democratic distortion? Because the internet to take examples that Rafał gave, which are good examples, but at the same time we know that people who are on the internet, particularly vocal, are not necessarily representative. There may be certain vocal minorities, that there can be certain under-assessment or over-assessment of the normal sort of distribution of preferences in the society, and that if we rely too much on that sort of information, we may distort perhaps the best thing that we still have, that is the traditional, liberal representative democracy.
Three gentlemen, then the voices here.
My name is Marek Slobodnik. I'm from the Slovak Atlantic Commission. My question is actually very similar. You talked about how participation in debate and how providing feedback for politicians and engaging directly in the political process is fantastically beneficial. But of course, we know that the skills and the resources needed to do all these things are far from universal. I mean, this is of course the digital divide. So my question is whether the benefits reaped from all these things are shared equally by all, or are only for the benefit of young, rich, educated people. Thank you.
My name is Natalia Kolyada. I'm artistic director of Belarus Free Theatre. Iryna, thank you so much for your great introduction on Belarus. And there are 5 of you are sitting here, and Iryna is the only one who is coming from dictatorship. So she has her very strong voice, but I decided that I need to make it a little bit stronger. We're the only underground company in our country, and the positive side of social networking, that all our spectators come to our performances only because of blogs. Otherwise, it's not possible to get to any of our performances. But I'm not talking about theater now. Just a few comments and question. During the presidential elections in Belarus on the 19th of December, Belarusian authorities used Chinese filters. So it was not possible to enter Gmail, Twitter, Facebook. Many pages were just blocked. For people in Belarus, it was not possible to read news inside of Belarus. It was possible to read for people outside of Belarus. So it was the idea that people will not get together. If Belarusian authorities are very creative and they're buying Chinese filters to block all activities in Belarus, what kind of mechanism exists on the side of Facebook, for example? What could be provided to such countries like Belarus in order for people to have access? And there are not so many independent media in Belarus. I mean, it's just, there is no independent media in Belarus. There are some websites there, and all of them were destroyed overnight. So again, this is the fear of Belarusian authorities of any independent ideas and thoughts in Belarus. People were arrested. Founder of Charter 97 was killed, and all independent offices were destroyed. What kind of mechanism exists on the side of such huge entities as Facebook, and what kind of mechanism exists in European Parliament, European Commission, in order to provide some protection inside the country, like Belarus?
Hi, my name is Anna Zamec, and I'm from Poland. I'm a freelance journalist, and I really appreciate this debate. Thank you so much for your interesting insights. I'd like to continue on the topic of the threats that social media can pose as a double-edged sword. You touched upon that a lot, but basically I'd like to ask you a little controversial question. What do you think are the odds that in future the regimes actually will outsmart the wired activists and become even more technology savvy? That's the first question. And the second question, maybe in Belarus it's not the case yet. The regime is not that technology savvy, but There are countries that invest a lot of money in surveillance technology in order to monitor social media such as Facebook, such as Twitter. One of those countries is Azerbaijan, where it becomes really, really easy. In Azerbaijan, if you try to express your opinions freely on the internet, it can easily land you in jail. One of my friends actually posted on Facebook a year ago a few comments calling people to protest against the government. You know, it was after the Arab Spring, so he was calling on similar protests in Azerbaijan. He got 2 years in jail for that. Of course, the charge was different. That was just an excuse. So my question is how to mitigate the threat of surveillance technologies. What is Facebook doing in order to mitigate this risk and threat? Because surveillance technologies are also growing very fast. They're growing as fast as social media and you know the number of users. So it's an important question to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Because there was like 5, at least, could you raise hands? Who would like to? 1, 2, 3, 4? Okay. So if you can take 1-2 minutes stance, not longer, because we have 10 minutes, and then also I would like to ask our panelists to answer. Please.
Hello, I'm Chen from China, and I study in the University of Wroclaw. I'd like to raise very short, 2 short questions. And the first one is, when we talk about democracy raised by social media, I think one thing is, for example, in democratic countries like Europe, the participation of netizens is 70%. But in China, or maybe in Belarus, the participation of netizens are really low. Like in China, it's 35%. So only 35% are using internet. Is it a guarantee to promote a democratic regime? And the second one is, because most of the social medias, when they founded, they have an economic agenda instead of political agenda. So, for example, in China, there's a lot of microblog users, and because of the new technology advancement, it makes the government really difficult to filter and to censorship on the very quick and fast post. So, which create a feedback mechanism from the bottom of the citizens to the top level. But it's also a danger for the social media. So my question will be, do you think all these companies, like for example, Chinese version of Facebook, Chinese version of Twitter, in the future, they would like to side with the government, or they would face they will face the danger of losing revenues and profits, or they would support the citizens and to contribute to the democratic process.
Thank you. Next question, please. Over there, behind you.
Hi, my name is Rafał. I'm a science correspondent with the public radio in Poland. I'd like to touch upon those mothers with kids. Mothers and kids, bikers, granted, they're all voters, and obviously the voice is very important, but somebody touched upon the overrepresentation. I mean, cancer patients and people mentally challenged are also voters, but may not be necessarily that technologically savvy. What about them? I've read various forums about mothers with kids, with mentally challenged kids, and I focused especially on one disease called autism, for which there is no known, nobody knows where it comes from, and nobody knows how to cure it. And the advice that the mothers were giving each other, I thought my hair would fall off, really. I read it for 3 years, and I read about energy therapies, homeopathy, what have you. And I stopped reading it after 3 years, and if you put a gun to my head and ask me about my own opinion, I would say, stop this madness. That's another, I think, dark side of the internet. Any comment, please? Help.
Thank you. The two last voices. Here.
My name is Adam Bodnar, I'm from the Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights. I have a question to Mr. Ostrowski concerning the recent initiative which was taken, in fact, by the Ministry of Administration and Civilization. In this follow-up to the ACTA debate, there was this initiative that Poland should join Open Government Partnership, and the Ministry requested or motioned to the Council of Ministers that Poland should join. Unfortunately, it seems that Prime Minister Tusk is maybe not that much concerned about transparency and values connected with that, because the Council of Ministers didn't agree now to join the Open Government Partnership and said that there will be some plan of action, and basically we don't know what is it. And my question is basically, what is this plan of action, and what are the reasons behind the decision of the Council of Ministers not to join the Open Government Partnership? Thank you.
My name is Igor, Polish Institute of International Affairs. Thank you very much, first of all, for a very interesting and inspiring discussion. But I would like to have a very short question, actually. We speak mainly about the relations between the society and the government, but I would like to provide some wider perspective, and I would like you to comment, to tell us what do you think about the meaning of internet, social media in international perspective, namely the concept of diplomacy, which is recently developed by the United States, and especially this initiative of promotion of the right to free access as a new kind of human rights, so to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all interesting remarks and good questions. We have quite a challenge, 5 minutes and, I don't know, 15 questions. So please choose the question you would like to answer, and or give comments. Igor wants to start.
I'll be very quick, because I think there's actually one very important answer to a lot of these questions that are asked, and I think the key is to keep it open. We need to keep the internet open, and there are a lot of challenges ahead of us that, let's say, lie both in the industry and in the government. There are different, let's say, ideas and about how to, let's say, create different solutions, platforms for the internet that may, let's say, as a side effect, make internet less interoperable and less open. And although I'm a great fan of Facebook, we have to have other tools than Facebook. If we're only, let's say, if there's only Facebook, YouTube, iStore, and Google in the internet, it will be very, very easy for the Chinese and for the Belarusians to work around it. If we leave creativity online, and if we leave the basis of the internet that, let's say, our fathers, grandfathers created, it's already back, 40 years now. So it's the initial ideas of the academic network that internet once was, and the idea that it's just a pipe. It's just a pipe where whatever you push through from the sender, you get at the end. That will be, if we keep that phenomena, then I think we're going to be okay. And I used Facebook in China. It was very easy. You just take a VPN account, and there you go. And if you look at the whole hacker phenomena, and if you look at a lot of the, if you look at a lot of the let's say issues that we only identify with piracy and let's say IPRs, then you see that that community is actually fighting for open internet and actually delivering tools that can be used. And I think rightfully so. So if it's open, it's let's say democratic and future forward looking. Now, and that leads me to my open government. If you open up government question, I haven't heard that the Council of Ministers said no. What I heard was that the Council of Ministers said, prepare a plan first, and then let's adopt it. The Prime Minister is not longer keen in agreeing to different types of partnerships without very concrete, strong plans. And I know that the partnership says, first you enter, then you develop a plan for what you want to do within the partnership. We've decided the other way around. We're a sovereign nation, we can do that. So first we want to develop a plan, we want to know what we're going to do, and then once we agree on what we want to do, then we'll join the partnership.
The flip side of internet, the problem is that it's completely different internet now than it used to be a few years back, and here openness is really important. Why? Because with customization, with profiling and so on and so forth, we just get our opinions reinforced. I mean, there's this beautiful English word, serendipity, where the mother of diversity is actually chance encounters with diverse opinions. And what we have now on the net, and we are going to regulate it, by the way, in for example, privacy regulations and directive, is that we are just reinforcing our opinions. And that's what's happening, for example, in your portal, that I used to be a member, but there was simply no discussion, because when someone saw platform, civic platform logo, there was immediately just, political bashing, no real discussion, no real exchange of views. And I'm just going to give you one example. With personalized search, I mean, unfortunately, we're creating those sort of self-segregated communities in which just, our own opinions are being reinforced. I mean, one example was being given of two ladies who were looking for an answer about oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. One was working for an NGO, another was working for a big company. The woman from NGO was directed immediately, to all of those environmentalist sort of, websites, whereas the woman who was working for a company was directed immediately to Shell and BP websites. And this is a problem. Even if, for example, I have on Facebook all kinds of different friends, some of them really conservative, but I get feedback all the time from those who actually, with whom I get into contact most often. Their opinions appear at the top. And this is a problem that we have to be aware of, the fact that with the changing nature of internet, with customization and so on and so forth, we are actually getting just reinforcement of our ideas. There's no bridging, and when it comes to politics, we're just getting more and more partisan, which is a real problem.
I think this kind of discussion and will help us to prevent actually that the dark side will succeed. I'm just a strong believer in human intelligence and in a positive way of surviving instinct. So I'm not so much worried about the dark side. I think we will manage, we will learn, we will listen to each other, we will see, and companies are part of this. It's a dialogue which we have. I mean, it's a dialogue we all participate in, and governments in the same way. So we will learn from each other, we will learn from negative examples. I give you some of my friends. I have a lively debate, and I can tell you there are some which are really fighting on my Facebook side. I give you some of mine. It's not good if you only get one-sided view. I wouldn't like this. I would love to come back to you on what one can do on filter, but I would love to have a discussion with you and connect you to our team, which can give you more detailed answers. I mean, I think there's one thing we should not forget. Like humans become more intelligent, and the governments must become really the manager, the kind of, I don't know how you can call it in the future, but somebody who is really responsible, looking into it, how to work with with their citizens, but on the other side, not shy away that when you constantly get negative feedback on something on the internet, that you each time stop an initiative. I think it was you who said, listen to the other ones which are not part of the games as well, which are maybe not participating in the discussion. They may be, as important as the ones you hear. But I think that's the role of government. Government must become even more sophisticated and more intelligent and build the resources in-house to deal with it.
And I will try to answer your question, because it also goes to countries like Belarus or China probably. I don't believe that the government will outsmart the activists, and not only in the digital society, but even back when I was doing the print magazine, the government was not able to create a popular use dependent magazine. It's because it's very hard to force creativity. And that's the way why I think that we are outsmarting the government and we will win in the end, even though the force is on their side. The second point is monitoring and surveillance. Yes, it's a threat, it's a challenge. On the other hand, to each bad code and bad program, there are now globally thousands, hundreds of thousands and millions activists and hackers who are doing open source platforms which help to circumvent all those blockages and things. Again, it doesn't save us from the internet being down on the 19th of December, but it was up back on the 20th, and there were people in the world who were following and spreading the news, and I got calls from people from the States and from other countries to support me when I was literally running away from the police. And that's a story. And I will also say that the Berlin Wall fell way before Facebook and internet spreadage. So our parents, grandparents did it without internet. We will do it with internet. Internet is just a very good tool. And again, back to the theater, people find out about performances through social networks, but it is a real performance and real actors who are actually moving their feelings. So I believe that internet is just a really great tool for all of us to use, but it's not the only one, and we should keep our minds open. We should use all the tools possible. And in countries like Belarus, some of that small newspapers are still making big difference for small places like villages. So on this optimistic note, we should all go for lunch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Internet is not enough to survive here. Thank you very much to panelists. Thank you for your participation.